November 2024. Elon Musk donated $290 million to elect Donald Trump, the largest individual political donation in American history. Trump gave Musk the keys to the federal government. Together, they controlled the most powerful nation on earth. 6 months later, Musk called Trump's signature law a disgusting abomination. Trump threatened to destroy Musk's companies. Musk accused Trump of covering up Jeffrey Epstein files. Trump suggested deporting Musk back to South Africa. Tesla stock fell 6% in a single day. Musk launched his own political party. 6 months after that, Musk was back funding Trump's party for the 2026 midterms. What actually happened? And what does it reveal about how political power really works? The Trump-Musk feud is the most analyzed political story of 2025. Thousands of videos, millions of opinions, hours of commentary, and almost none of them are asking the right question. The right question is not who won. The right question is not, do they actually like each other? The right question, the one that tells you everything, is this: what were the incentives on both sides? And when did those incentives change? Because when you answer that question, you realize this story was completely predictable. From the alliance to the fracture to the reconciliation, every single stage followed a logic that had nothing to do with friendship, loyalty, or ideology, and everything to do with money, power, and self-interest. Here is what we are covering today. Layer 1, the alliance. Why two of the most powerful men on earth needed each other and what each of them was actually getting from the relationship. Layer 2, the bill that broke everything. What the big, beautiful bill actually was, why Musk called it debt slavery, and the specific financial interest that nobody is naming clearly enough. Layer 3, the America Party Gambit. What Musk's third-party threat actually was and why it was never what it appeared to be. Layer 4, the inevitable reconciliation. Why both men had overwhelming mathematical incentives to end the feud and why the timeline was completely predictable. Layer 5, the framework. What this story teaches you about from every senators agreeing on a bill you will ever to two nations signing a treaty. 5 layers, 1 framework. Let us begin. To understand why the feud happened, you first need to understand why the alliance existed in the first place. In 2024, Elon Musk donated more than $290 million to elect Donald Trump and Republican candidates. That was not just a large political donation. It was the largest single donor contribution in the history of American democracy. By nearly $100 million over the next highest contributor, the political media covered this as a story about a billionaire's ideology, a tech visionary betting on a political figure he believed in. Apply the gentleman's framework, map the actual incentives. Elon Musk's companies across electric vehicles, space exploration, neurotechnology, and infrastructure operate in industries that are directly and deeply shaped by federal policy. SpaceX holds billions of dollars in government contracts with NASA and the Department of Defense. Those contracts require a friendly relationship with the administration that awards them. Tesla's business model had benefited significantly from federal electric vehicle tax incentives worth thousands of dollars per vehicle sold to American consumers. Federal regulatory frameworks directly affect how Tesla competes in the American market. Neuralink requires Food and Drug Administration approval to conduct human trials. The FDA is a federal agency controlled by the administration in power. Every major business Musk operates is directly affected by federal policy, federal contracts, and federal regulatory decisions. A man who spends $290 million to elect a president is not making a political statement. He is making a business investment. And Trump understood exactly what he was getting in return. Musk donated the largest sum in political donation history and delivered something even more valuable. He brought the reach of X, formerly Twitter, the dominant platform for political discourse, with hundreds of millions of users actively behind Trump's campaign. He brought credibility with a younger, tech-forward demographic that traditional Republican campaigning had consistently failed to reach. The return came quickly. When Trump took office in January 2025, Musk was appointed to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, positioned as one of the most powerful unelected figures in the U.S. government, given extraordinary access to federal spending records and institutional data. When Musk departed DOGE in May 2025, Trump gave him a gold key to the White House, a symbolic gesture marking him as a permanent welcome guest in the seat of American power. Trump said publicly, every alliance built on overlapping interests, not identical interests, contains a hidden fault line. The fault line runs exactly where those interests diverge. And the moment a specific event forces both parties to choose between the alliance and their core interests, the fault line becomes a fracture. For Trump and Musk, that event had a name, and it was 870 pages long. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, Trump's signature domestic policy package, 870 pages. The most sweeping overhaul of the federal tax code since 2017. What was inside it? Making Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent, giving individuals and corporations certainty that lower rates would not expire. $170 billion in new immigration enforcement and border security spending, the largest single investment in border control in American history. Significant cuts to Medicaid and federal food assistance programs described by supporters as refocusing safety nets and by critics as the deepest cuts to the social safety net in modern American history, and the provision that changed everything in this story. Federal EV tax credits had been worth up to $7,500 per vehicle to American consumers buying electric cars. They were a meaningful driver of Tesla sales in the American market. Eliminating them directly damaged Tesla's competitive position at a time when the company was already facing growing pressure from Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers offering lower prices. This is not a subtle financial detail. This is the core of the story. The man who spent $290 million to elect Trump did so partly because a Trump administration would be favorable to his business interests. The bill Trump was now demanding Congress pass directly damaged one of his most important businesses. Musk's response was immediate, explosive, and public. He wrote on X, this massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. He called it debt slavery. He said the bill contained the largest increase in the debt ceiling in U.S. history. He called it political suicide for the Republican Party. He urged Americans to flood Congress with calls opposing Trump's own signature legislation. He said Republican lawmakers who voted for it would lose their primary next year if it is the last thing I do on this earth. Trump responded by doing exactly what the gentleman's framework predicts any powerful figure does when challenged. He pointed directly at the challenger's financial interests to undermine the credibility of the challenge. Trump said publicly that Musk was upset because the bill takes away his EV mandate. He threatened to cut off billions in federal subsidies and government contracts from Musk's companies. When asked by a reporter whether he would consider deporting Musk, who was born in South Africa and became a U.S. citizen in 2002, Trump said, we will have to take a look. The feud then escalated beyond policy into one of the most explosive personal attacks in modern American political history. Musk accused Trump of deliberately suppressing files related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. Tesla shares fell nearly 6% in a single trading session as investors priced in the risk of Musk's companies losing federal contracts. On July 5th, 2025, the day after Trump signed the big, beautiful bill into law on the White House South Lawn on Independence Day, Musk posted on X that the America Party was established that day, its stated mission to give freedom back to the people and to avoid the bankruptcy of the United States. Here is the thing about the America Party that almost no political analyst is explaining clearly. What Musk was actually doing with the America Party was not what it looked like on the surface, and understanding it requires one foundational fact about the American electoral system. The United States uses a winner-take-all voting system, also known as first past the post. In every election, only one candidate wins the seat. There is no proportional representation. There is no reward for coming second. The candidate with the most votes wins everything. Everyone else wins nothing. This system produces one overwhelming structural consequence. It makes viable third parties nearly impossible to build. Any votes a third party receives come directly from one of the two major parties, splitting that party's vote and handing the seat to the opposing party. This is not a theory. Political scientists call it Duverger's law, and it has held true for over 200 years of American democratic history. No third party has broken the two-party system at the national level in the modern era. Elon Musk, who built multiple companies from scratch, who launched rockets to orbit, who leads some of the most analytically rigorous engineering organizations on Earth, knows Duverger's law. He outlined his America Party roadmap publicly, target 2 to 3 Senate seats and 8 to 10 House seats. He was not talking about winning the presidency. He was not building a movement to replace the Republican Party. He was building a targeting mechanism to punish specific Republican incumbents who had voted against his financial interests. The America Party was not a political party. It was a financial threat. A threat is only useful if it is credible. Musk did not need to actually build a successful third party. He needed to make Trump Republican leadership and Republican incumbents believe he was serious enough to follow through. That credibility, the genuine possibility that the man who spent $290 million in a single election cycle would now spend equivalent sums to destroy Republican incumbents who crossed him, was worth more as leverage than as an actual political organization. The key figure who understood this and acted on it was Vice President J.D. Vance maintained his relationship with Musk throughout the most intense period of the public feud. He reportedly urged Musk's allies to push him to back down from the America Party threat. And Musk, according to multiple credible reports, stayed in private contact with Vance while the public war with Trump continued. Why Vance? Because Musk began considering the 2028 presidential election. And Vance, as the sitting vice president, was the most natural Republican candidate to succeed Trump. Musk reportedly began weighing whether to back Vance financially in 2028, creating a third party that damaged Republican electoral performance in 2026 would directly undermine the party Musk wanted to empower in 2028. The America Party, if pursued aggressively, would make Musk a Republican spoiler, not a Republican kingmaker. Musk wanted to be a kingmaker. Spoilers do not choose the next king. By August 2025, less than 2 months after the America Party was announced, Musk had stopped posting about it. He turned his focus back to his companies. The threat had served its purpose or been determined to be too costly to execute. Either way, it was over. The reconciliation was not a surprise. It was not a display of personal warmth between two complicated men who buried their differences for the good of the country. It was the only logical outcome when you map the incentives on both sides. Map Musk's incentives to reconcile. SpaceX's government contracts worth billions of dollars annually require a cooperative relationship with the administration that awards, renews, and expands them. A publicly feuding relationship with a sitting president is not compatible with billion-dollar federal contract renewal. Tesla's competitive position requires federal regulatory frameworks that do not actively disadvantage electric vehicles. A hostile administration can introduce friction into regulatory processes that directly affect product approval timelines and market access. A Trump-aligned Republican majority in the 2026 midterms protects Musk's business interests across all his companies far more effectively than a Democratic majority taking control of congressional oversight committees. And backing Vance for 2028, which multiple sources indicated Musk was considering, requires maintaining credibility as a Republican ally, not as a Republican spoiler who costs the party congressional seats. Now map Trump's incentives to reconcile. The 2026 midterm elections are a critical political moment. Republican majorities in both the House and Senate are genuinely competitive. The party needs fundraising capacity at a scale that very few donors can provide. Musk donated $290 million in 2024. The 2026 midterms require comparable investment to protect and expand Republican congressional majorities. That fundraising capacity does not exist in the Republican donor base at the scale Musk provides. Additionally, X, the platform Musk controls, reaches hundreds of millions of users. It is the dominant platform for political discourse in the United States. Republican messaging distributed through a Musk-controlled platform that is actively hostile to the party is categorically less effective than through a platform whose owner is aligned with the party's electoral goals. When you lay those two incentive structures side by side, the reconciliation was not a question of if, it was a question of when. The timeline followed the logic precisely. August 2025, Musk quietly ended America Party activity. Focus returned to his companies. November 2025. Trump patted Musk on the arm at a White House event. A brief video circulated, no formal statement needed. January 1st, 2026, the first day of the midterm election year, Musk wrote publicly, "America is toast if the radical left wins. They will open the floodgates to illegal immigration and fraud won't be America anymore." He then began making significant contributions to Republican candidates for the 2026 midterms, reportedly going all in to help Republicans maintain congressional control. The alliance that had fractured so spectacularly in June 2025 was functionally rebuilt by January 2026. 7 months from disgusting abomination to America is toast. 7 months driven entirely by the realignment of financial and political incentives. This is not a story about personalities. It is a story about structures. And this is where the gentleman's framework delivers the most important analytical lesson of this entire story. Because what Trump and Musk demonstrated applies not just to them, it applies to every political alliance between individuals, between parties, between nations that you will ever encounter. Political alliances have 3 phases. Every alliance follows this structure, and once you understand it, you can map it onto any political relationship you encounter. Phase 1, formation. Alliances form when 2 parties have overlapping incentives, not identical incentives, overlapping ones. The distinction matters enormously. Trump needed money, platform reach, and credibility with a younger demographic. Musk needed political access, regulatory protection, and federal contract continuity. Those interests overlapped enough to build a functional alliance. They were never identical, and that gap between overlapping interests and identical interests is exactly where every alliance's fault line lives. Phase 2, fracture. Alliances fracture when a specific event forces both parties to choose between the alliance and their core interests. The big, beautiful bill was that event for Trump and Musk. Trump needed the bill to pass. It was the legislative centerpiece of his second term. Musk needed EV tax credits to remain. They were a significant component of Tesla's business model. For the first time in their relationship, their core interests pointed in directly opposite directions. The alliance could not survive that divergence. The fracture was not caused by personality. It was caused by the specific moment when the alliance became more expensive to maintain than to break. Phase 3, reconciliation. Alliances reconcile when both parties calculate that their losses from continued conflict outweigh their losses from rebuilding the relationship. By late 2025, Musk was losing on government contracts, investor confidence, and political influence. Trump was approaching a critical midterm election, needing Musk's fundraising capacity and platform reach. The calculation on both sides pointed identically toward reconciliation. The timeline was determined by how long it took both sides to complete that calculation, not by emotion, not by pride, not by ideology. Formation, fracture, reconciliation. Now here is how to apply this framework to any political alliance you encounter today. First, ask what each party gains from the alliance, not what they say they gain in public statements, what they actually gain financially, institutionally, and politically. Follow the money and the power before you follow anything else. Second, identify the fault line. Every alliance built on overlapping but non-identical interests contains a fault line. Find it by asking what single event or policy decision would force both parties to choose between the alliance and their core financial or political interests. Third, project the reconciliation. If the alliance fractures, ask which party loses more from continued conflict. That party will pursue reconciliation first and on terms more favorable to the other party. The party with less to lose from the fracture holds more negotiating power in the reconciliation. Apply that framework to Trump and Musk, and every stage of the story becomes completely predictable before it happens. Apply it to any alliance in American politics right now, and you will identify the fault lines before anyone else does. This is what it means to think like a statesman, not reacting to headlines, mapping the structures underneath them. Here is the gentleman's verdict on the Trump-Musk feud. The most powerful man on earth and the richest man on earth formed an alliance, broke it spectacularly in public, and then quietly rebuilt it within 7 months. The media covered every dramatic moment as though it were driven by personality, by ego, by loyalty, by betrayal. What actually drove it was simpler, more predictable, and far more instructive. Overlapping interests formed the alliance. Diverging interests fractured it. Realigned interests rebuilt it. At no stage did friendship, ideology, or personal loyalty determine the outcome. At every stage, the outcome was determined by the financial and institutional incentives that both men were rationally pursuing. This is not a cynical conclusion. It is an accurate one. And accurate conclusions, even uncomfortable ones, are what the gentleman's framework is designed to produce. The Trump-Musk story is not primarily a story about two remarkable individuals. It is a story about how political alliances work, built on interest, fractured by interest, and rebuilt by interest. The individuals change, the mechanism stays the same. Follow the incentives, map the fault lines, project the reconciliation. Every time, on every story, without exception. If this breakdown gave you a genuinely different lens on how American power actually operates, subscribe to this channel right now, because this is what political literacy looks like in practice. Not reading headlines, reading the incentive structures underneath them. My online course is available now at kentpolitics.com/courses, lifetime access for $997. If you want to work with me directly, my one-on-one coaching program is at kentpolitics.com/coaching. The application to schedule a call is at kentpolitics.com/application. All links, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, email, and website are in the description below. My name is Kent Tran. This is The Political Gentleman. Formation, fracture, reconciliation.